In this lesson, we're going to look at 3 different ways that we can kind of go beyond the use of just a simple pen tool. We're going to talk about the blob tool right here. Nice name. We're going to look at the paintbrush tool and the pencil tool. All 3 of these take us beyond a simple pen tool, and each one does it in a different way. There are also some enhancements here that Illustrator put in the latest version of CC. Let's start with the blob tool by double-clicking on it and getting the options. Now you have a keep selected and merge only with selection. We'll talk about that in a minute. One of the enhancements, Illustrator has combined fidelity and another slider that used to be here called smooth into one to give us more control. So we can go from accurate to smooth. Down here we have options. Number 1, we have size. Let's skip that for a second and go to angle and roundness. Now, angle and roundness can be controlled here by moving the sliders, or we can move up here, say by clicking right there, changing the angle, and then maybe changing the roundness either down here or right here. So I guess I have what you would call a calligraphic brush right now. Now, if I take that back to 100, the angle really doesn't mean anything at all because it's a round brush. But if you're attentive, we can come back down here and change that to 0. Just like that. Now let's go back to size up here. Size, of course, is the size of the brush measured in points. Default is 20. But let's look at this option right here because you have the same options for each one of these. Right now it's on fixed, which means we have a 20-point brush, and that's all we're going to get. And the option here says this is what it looks like, all through its variations. Now if we click here, we can change that. You can do random, which is, well, random. I'm going to use pressure because I'm going to use a drawing tablet. So if I come down to pressure, I now have a variation. Now currently my variation is set to 0. Now that means something. That means pressure doesn't do anything. I need a variation. So if I click here and change that, now watch up here the kind of the demo area, at least that's what I call it, and you can see variation. In other words, if I take it all the way to 20, I'm saying to the computer, when I apply pressure, I want to go from like 1 pixel all the way up to 20. Give me complete variation. You can do the same thing with angle and roundness. Let's go ahead and stop and click OK. Now, before we get started, look over here. We have a fill color, but no stroke. Now, watch what happens when I come over and draw something. The fill goes away. The color that the fill was becomes the stroke. So you might be misled into thinking you're creating some kind of really neat kind of stroke. You're not. That's a fill. The blob tool uses the stroke color as its fill color. If I go up to the word view, you can see under outline that is indeed a filled shape. Now let's come back out for a second. Let's come over here and maybe draw, just anything you want. Use pressure if you're using a tablet like I am to create just about any shape you want. But what about when I cross over like that? Well, if it's the same color, which it is, and I come up to the word view again to show you this, it is one shape. The same color will merge. Let's take that back again. Let's change the color of the stroke to something else and try that again. Now, in this case, because it's a different color, if we come back up here, they're separate shapes. So if we go in, say, to our selection tool, we can select that. It's a different piece. So this reminds me a lot of some of the Pathfinder filters, because you have a Pathfinder filter that allows you to merge colors or separate colors, kind of acting that way. Let me do a Control-A and a delete one more time here. Let's double-click again on Blobo. Let's look at this option right here. You have from accurate to what we've been doing to smooth. Now, if we click OK and come back out again here, and I do something, notice it smooths it out. It just kind of depends on what you want to do. Now, I usually like to leave mine. Let me get rid of that stuff again. I usually like to leave mine here. That's just me. But you can choose different ones depending on what you want to do. Now, the last 2 are keep selected and merge only with selection. If we say merge only with selection, let's start with that one and come back out here again and draw. And this is the same color. And draw again. They are different pieces because the only time it will merge is if something is selected. Now let's go ahead and get rid of that stuff. Command-A on a Mac, Control-A in Windows, delete. Let's go back to our blob tool and say keep selected. Go ahead and click OK. That just simply means that when you're done drawing, it will still be selected, which means if I do this, they will be put together. But if I draw something else out here and try to come back to this one, it won't be merged. So you have a lot of different options, just depends on what you want to do. Control-A, delete, Command-A on a Mac, Control-A in Windows. Let's go to the brush tool right here, the paintbrush. Now the difference between the blob tool and the brush tool is that the paintbrush tool works with brushes right over here. So if we pick up one of these brushes and come over here and begin painting, basically what we will do is paint a brush stroke. Now we're going to get more into brushes later, but understand the major difference here is simply the fact that using brushes, it's not painting like a paintbrush. If we double click on it, you can see that we have fidelity. We have fill new brush strokes. Let's look at that one. Let's click OK after we selected Andy. Andy always does that. Let me go ahead and give ourselves a different color here and come over here and then draw again. And I'm using a drawing tablet, but it doesn't matter. Well, it fills it. I'm not a big fan of that one. I don't usually use it, but you got it if you need it. Let's go ahead and Control-A, delete. Let's go back into double clicking. You also have keep selected and edit selected paths. Let's look at that one on the next option. So let's go ahead and get out of here. And let's go ahead and double click on this one right here, the pencil tool. Fidelity, we know what that does. Fill, we know what that does. This one right here. Keep selected and edit selected paths within 6 or however many pixels you want. And I'm going to leave both these on. I'm going to click OK. Now if I come over here and begin drawing, it's still selected. Now watch that asterisk. That asterisk means I'm drawing a new path. But if I come over here and touch, I get within that 6 pixels and begin drawing again, it adds to the shape. But here's the interesting thing. If I come like right over about here and draw, it assumes I wanted to change the shape at that point and get rid of what was on the other side of it. Now you also have over here a smooth tool right there. Now the smoothing tool to me is an uncomplicating tool. We have a lot of pen points on that line. Those pen points control the path itself. Could I make that same path with less pen points? Let's find out. Let's come over here and maybe erase around on these right here. See, it took out 2 of them, but it still maintained the integrity of the path. So if you can, sometimes it won't work and sometimes it will, is we can see if we can eliminate some of the complexity just by drawing over it. And the last one in here is a path eraser tool, which erases the path wherever you want it to erase, just like that. It creates a gap in the path. Now these, different than this, these are actually strokes. So if I come over to this one and select it and go into my stroke options down here and change the weight, that one is just a stroke. So we can control strokes with the pencil tool. We can use brushes with the brush tool, and we can have a whole lot of fun with the blob tool. 3 different ways to get us beyond working with just a common pen tool.